we're still protecting the heritage. And as one of our family members said, we're attempting to find out how to protect the cemeteries. Loss of land, memory eradication is cultural deprivation. And we know it to be a heritage destructionist.
It's all very interesting, but you lost it. I'm not sure how it was in what you just said.
Let me point out let me answer the question, because what you're asking is inside the framework of an enforcement accountability and a litigation-based strategy. So we understand that. Additionally,
I'm not suggesting litigation strategy. I mean, I've heard that come from young. I'm not suggesting that. In terms of my enforcement authority, if litigation is required, my office is going to litigate it. And it ain't going to cost you a dime. But you have to give me a basis for initiating litigation.
Well, that conversation I'm having with you now is the challenge that we come up against is in the language of community and being able to communicate in such a way that it points to specific reference points of an enforcement accountability is the challenge that you're bumping up against. So that's part of the process. We understand the specificity and the accountability for enforcement, but the barrier of the community language of his experience of a complaint and the wrongdoing is not going to be able to communicate in such a way that it meets the litmus test of an enforcement conversation. So we understand that as a challenge, and this is the first opportunity to even work through it or address it or have it be on the table so we can look at what we now need to do as a community.
Who is the historian of this community? Someone who understands the history of the South Carolina? I mean, I don't know it, and I ask that for a reason. I mean, when R.J. Reynolds at one point owned all or part of the island, or certain ownership of it, when was that?
No, it's a long history, dating some 350 years ago, with several owners. Okay, without belaboring the process, we have the history written, and we'll make sure you get a copy.
Okay.
However, in that, there were several owners. For example, Spalding, who brought slaves to the island. Spalding was a trader both in Charleston and Savannah, in their records. And there have been several attempts through Spalding to make the island function economically. Slaves, as you know, had the ability to plant corn, cotton, indigo, rice. Rice was a big one. It was a real, and cotton.
Spalding was doing the time of
slavery. That was doing slavery.
And then the chapter was Spalding.
And then after he died, the larger portion was sold to after Spalding, Kaufman, another millionaire who dealt with the Fords and the Rockefellers and so forth.
Okay.
And then the last owner of the major portion was R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco.
And Mr. Hall, it's your son, Mr. Hall, I'm going to say Mr. Hall, had alleged that R.J. Reynolds' claim of right or ownership of title to the property was fraudulent. On what basis do you allege that was fraudulent?
Well, there are several of them. For example, we know in Raccoon Bluff there was 1,000, and there still is, the land is there, 1,000 acre of land that was purchased by slaves. The records are in the courthouse. They, for $1,000, they were charged $5,000.
For 1,000 acres, they paid $5,000.
Right, they had 5 years to pay for it. And what happened, that 1,000 acre was divided into 33 1/3 acre plots. You've heard that before. Each family was given the opportunity to buy. They had, in 1 year, you have to raise $30.33 to pay your portion to make that $1,000 payment.
And they would assume they did that.
They did that, but without going through a lot of the other stuff, and the land was purchased.
And that land that was purchased is part of the land that R.J. Reynolds laid claim to.
Correct. R.J. Reynolds claim, or his organization claimed, any land that people weren't sitting on at the time. And as you know, as jobs went away, people had to go other places to work and make a living. Now, that's just one example. But the other examples, we have documented records where deeds and signatures were forged. Some 1 year a person couldn't write their name, the next year they could. You know, but that information is available.
So has anything ever been done judicially about that?
To what?
You have documented records that show where deeds were forged and inappropriate activity taken. Has anybody made any challenge to those deeds by filing lawsuits or petitions or complaints?
Not in that direct sense, because this is part of that whole process, to do it right and do it effectively. Because our belief is the whole system is corrupt, and we don't want to spin our wheels. As in the case with this young man, they did a switcheroo on the judges. You know, one judge couldn't find the person the same, but
that kind of time. I hate to point out the obvious, but we're part of that system.
I know. I want to make sure we didn't miss the point. We're dealing with a system that's not going to take us anywhere unless we have other powers looking at the facts. And I'm not talking about emotions, although I tend to get emotional. Look at the facts of what's really happening here, and that's the problem. Sapelo, a lot of federal dollars come into the state because Sapelo is used as a conduit for those funds.
Can you and I continue this over lunch? Can we get that break that you mentioned?